Okay, you all good? Let's do it. Hello and welcome to the B2C Lead Generation Podcast.
You're listening to the B2C Lead Gen Podcast. My name is Daniel Hopewell, here with Simon Delaney, and this is episode 82. You need fewer leads. And we're just going to be honest here because we were sat this morning trying to plan what we're going to talk about on today's podcast. And we remembered, Simon, that you've got a conference that you're giving a presentation at tomorrow, which you need to practice for. So we kind of said, let's two birds and one stone it. Prepare it in that sense.
Yeah, it's a great topic. You need fewer leads, and that's really what the emphasis is on. Is most people focusing on more leads, and the reality is it's all about the end result, about sales. And we've done something similar before, but yeah, I've got this talk, done the worked on the presentation yesterday, practiced it like once. So this is a great time to actually go through what people are paying to listen to. So you now get this for free as part of the podcast. With the same information.
Practice what we preach. Like you said, back in the day, one of the first podcasts we did, which kind of seemed to resonate with listeners, at least in terms of number of listeners, if you go by that, was the episode 22. You don't need leads, you need sales. We spoke about things in a fairly ideological sense back then, and today we're going to sort of dive in more practically and try and unpack how to get more sales from fewer leads for the point of this podcast. But before we do that, Simon, like you sort of mentioned it there, but like lead generators might, or even lead buyers might listen to that title, you need fewer leads, and be horrified. So let's just explain what we mean by that before we kind of dive in.
So it's just this idea that leads equal success. I mean, and they don't. Leads are not all leads are equal. It's a number one thing. So the conversion rates alter, depending on source, subsource, keyword, channel, ad, everything. But also, when on average, if you don't sort of do anything, and this is from any sort of source, 35% of leads you can never sell to. This isn't like you won't ever sell to them, as in there's still an opportunity. You can never sell to them. So, and I've said this so many times, just as a bit of background on this, you have so many people working on, like the color of the CTA button, the number of transitions on a multi-form page, and all those things make differences, right? The headline that you use, the messaging. But if you're driving paid media, they're adding like tiny incremental improvements, right? You might go, well, I suppose it's 100% improvement, but say you might go from a 1% conversion rate to a 2% conversion rate. But if you can remove 35% of the leads that you can never sell to, this just beats like everything, the improvement is ginormous. And you don't have to, there's like less money in it as well. I mean, this is the whole point. So really, all these things are incredibly important at the front end, at the coalface of generating leads, the ad that you're going to use, the landing page that people are going to hit. But you can also set those up so they're more sales driven. We're not going to be talking about it today, and that's about growing a brand and, meaning something more than potentially just going after the lead and making it clear to people, why they're visiting the site, and changing the proposition from purely lead based to something better. But in this talk, what we're going to focus on is like post ad, someone is hitting a form, and there's a whole series of things that happen with that lead before an outcome happens, a sale, not a sale, whatever it is, and then using all that information to improve it. So that's what the talk I'm going to be doing tomorrow is about, and that's what this podcast is effectively going to be about.
The good thing there is how to I think of the structure to this podcast, and like you just said, the structure we've got really clearly. We'll follow the journey that a lead goes on. We'll start with the form, we'll end sort of how you track it along. But let's do that. Let's jump in there and say, how can people listening make a difference at the
Okay, so if we want to focus on fewer leads and more sales, I think it's really important to break the form down into two areas. And the way I think of it is low fraud channels and high fraud channels. So low fraud channels are things like PPC, for example, where you've got like a high intent keyword. So let's imagine, I don't know, it's for life insurance or something. I always say that just because those people generating life insurance leads, but it could be anything, broadband. Someone types in, give me life insurance now. So there's a few things that you need to think about here. So one is you want to obviously make the form easy to fill in. You don't want to put anyone off by having like billions of questions, unless you want to get the lead close to a sale. But let's imagine it's like typical lead gen. We actually did another podcast about that. But let's imagine it's typical things we're capturing, like some base details. But by making the form easy to fill in, what this is about is making sure they fill the form in with their correct details. Because on a low fraud channel, and this is things where you probably have a max of like 10% fraud, I reckon, say in PPC, which is like really low compared to some affiliate channels. What this is really about is not just stopping the bad leads getting in, it's about preventing the good leads from missing out. You don't want someone entering like a digit wrong on their telephone number, or missing something off their email address, or giving you the wrong information in some way. So it's less about removing the fraudsters and more about like, how can I make sure that we can definitely provide the service or product or the quote to this person, and they're going to give us the right details and the channels they want us to contact them in. And so a classic example of that, something I will be mentioning at the talk, is what do you do with a mobile number that someone's put on a form when it's out of signal or out of network? So you've got like a few options, right? So one is you just let it go through and hope for the best. So, I don't know, it's just going to go to your dialer or something, or into a CRM, and then they're going to pick it up and go, this is engaged, and they're going to, I don't know, carry out whatever exercises they do, put it in some sort of sales cycle. The other option is on the form itself, you highlight to the user that you need a different number. This number, we can't call you on it. Can you enter a different number? But then you have the problem of like, what if they don't have a different number? Or what if that is literally the only number that they want you to contact them on? And the third option is that you actually allow that lead to come in, but then you re-verify it over a period of like, I don't know, let's say 8 hours. And at that point, you then make a decision about whether there's a likelihood of this mobile ever becoming live. So that's what I recommend people do, is that you allow that lead to be submitted, and over a period of time, you recheck it. Because bear in mind, we're talking about a HLR check here, which is like £3.50 1,000. If you're just paying £25 for a click on a really high intent keyword on a saturated market, you literally, may as well let it through. Or I suppose you could highlight it's incorrect, but I just think that you're running into trouble and of, people putting a different number in. But what happens is you deliver it to the sales team at the moment it becomes active. Now, this feeds into another point, which is, one is, what if it doesn't become active? And we've done loads of studies on this. To give you an example, after a period of about 16 hours, any mobile numbers that are still out of network, turned off, we call them absent subscribers, is like the technical definition on the HLR response. Only 7% ever become live again. So after about 12 hours, you can make a definite decision that like, there's very little likelihood we're ever going to be able to reach this person. So now if you have their email address, you could potentially email them and say, the mobile number you supplied is turned off. Can you give us a different one? You could actually do ad retargeting to them using the parameter of the telephone number to know it's bad, then retarget them with like Facebook ads to ask them to fill a different telephone number in. But these are things that you probably want to do when you're paying £25 a lead, rather than reject the lead and say it's bad. There's another thing as well, which is, what if you have the mobile number and they've put it in incorrectly and it goes to a different person? and suddenly it's like, not Mr. John Smith that you thought it was. What are you going to do? Obviously, you could try and sell to the new person, even though it's not them, but why not? You've got the details, and it's like, oh, I'm really sorry, we contact you. But these are things that you need to think about, and this is the difference between a low fraud and a high fraud channel, and also whether you are doing the lead generation or you're buying the leads. Obviously, if you are just buying the leads, you're in a completely different situation, which is like you could just reject that lead and the £25 is lost anyway. So it's up to the lead generator at that point to ensure that they're selling 100% verified, correct details, and ensuring they get the return on their investment of that £25. So if we talk about high fraud channels, so let's talk about like affiliate marketing. Not all affiliates are necessarily bad, but we work with some of the biggest affiliate networks in the world, and I've seen huge amounts of fraud at like an industrial scale that can be incredibly difficult to catch. These guys, these fraudsters, would probably be like some of the best marketers you'd ever meet if they were legit. Because they're that like, every single thing that you do or try and put in the place, they'll try and figure out, that's their job, is to try and figure out how to get around it. But in high fraud channels, and this is the good thing about it is that you typically pay on performance, right? So you're not paying on the click at like £25 for a really high intent, you're paying a CPL. So what you really want to do is verify the absolute shit out of everything. And this means putting verification on every single field and ensuring that you get like 100% live information. If you were talking about driving traffic to the form, I'd use reCAPTCHA to catch bots injecting data behind the forms. You want to be deduping on IPs. When you dedupe on IPs, you need to start thinking about if you've got like an office block and they've all got the same IP, how many people are you going to allow from the same IP to fill that form in? And it could depend on the offer as well, right? Because if it's something that every family member could have, you might think, okay, there could be, average families, 5 people or something, we could get 5 people in it or whatever. But these are the things you need to think about. You've got a dedupe on IP, how many people are you going to do it on? I'd use anti-fraud text. This is rejecting bots, browsers. Basically what this typically is a list of known bad IP addresses that is constantly added to, and you're doing lookups against it. And there might be some other stuff that are plugged in, but that's typically it. A key thing is using double opt-in mechanisms, and this is asking the user to confirm their interest via SMS or email, however that you're going to be contacting them. And it's only at the point that they click something on the email or the SMS or on the form you can actually have something where they can enter digits from an SMS just sent them, and that just confirms they're a real person. And only at that point do they submit. But what's interesting about affiliates is you can have some really good ones that have virtually no fraud. So this might be where you create like, affinity partnerships and things, or where you're working with one source where for some reason they, driving loads of sales, have got like a really good email list or something, and they've got a really good relationship with them. So in that case, you probably want to think about changing the form to more of the low fraud channel and giving that to those really high performing affiliates. And I've done all this, right? I mean, it's like we've done exactly the things that I'm mentioning, and we literally do it for some of our clients at big affiliate networks, where we're trying to identify within the network where is high fraud and low fraud coming from. So the low fraud benefit from sort of a frictionless experience where we really try and get the data going through, whereas on the high fraud, it's like we just need to prove this is a person is like our number one concern. But anyway, these are all things that you need to think about. And I need to go. I'm thinking about the talk I'm doing, but basically, my point on this is we all know, it's a phrase, we've used it before. Not all leads are created equal, but neither are the sources within the channels that drive those leads. And the same can be said of the ads that are used to drive leads, the landing page, the channel, the source, the subsource. And that's why all of them potentially need to be treated slightly differently.
Yeah. Before we kick on to the next point, I wrote something down, and I want to say it before I forget because I thought it was really good. Imagine if we could get like one of these people you say, one of these fraudsters who are really, really good at it on the show, and say to them, look, we'll put you in a dark room, hide your face so no one can see you, we'll blur, give you a voice distortion, and get them as a guest to tell us how to do some stuff. So imagine if that would be a good episode if anyone listening.
You know what? It's quite, in the spirit of transparency that you mentioned when we said, why don't we just say that you're doing this talk tomorrow? We've tried to do this sort of thing on the podcast, right? So I've approached, for example, not necessarily fraudsters, because I don't know any. I know a few people that know how they do it. So like, we had Rich Khan on, we've had a few other people talking about anti-fraud techniques, but we've never had a real fraudster on. It would be great if we could have someone with a voice box and like a blacked out face with a mask on or something.
Confessions of a fraudster.
Yeah. But what we have tried to do, just thinking about that, and it's been really unsuccessful in doing, is getting one of the actual sales guys from a call center on the podcast. And I've approached 7, 8 different contact centers to do this and get their experience of dealing with different types of leads, where it's coming from, the intent, what the difference is, whether they can notice like a trend or a pattern when they get different things. And every single time it's been shut down by the center that I've asked. I can't get like the director or their manager to allow. And I've said, can we speak to your best agent? Like, get us one of your best agents. How much is the lead making a difference? How much are you making a difference? Get it really from the horse's mouth. So anyone listening to this that has a contact center, if anyone is listening to it from a contact center, can we speak to one of your agents and get them on the podcast? That would be fantastic.
I feel like the only reason they would say no to that is if ultimately they knew that there were issues with how they were running the contact center. Like, they were scared that the agent might say things and make them look badly.
I don't know what it is. Just even, people are sort of can be scared of like the slightest bit of negativity, but it's not really negativity. It's just like the reality that we all know happens anyway. Yeah. And there's the shit that we talk about on this podcast.
Anyway, we've gone entirely off piece there, so I'm going to try and come back to the structure. We've done the form. Next step in the journey is people receiving the lead.
Yeah, so we have a checklist for receiving leads. You could just bang it straight in a dialer or a CRM or an ESP or a database or something, but there's a bunch of stuff that you might want to do as part of that. So number one is tracking that lead at a really granular level. So this is, what ad did the lead come from? What keyword, what source, what channel, what subsource? Absolutely everything that you can get as values on the lead. And you'll see why on a few points on. The next thing is ensuring they can be a customer. So, you need to run through a bunch of stuff. So on a form, you might not necessarily be checking whether they've got like Mickey Mouse names or, swear words in their names or something in the name that makes it look suspicious, because you're trying to reduce the friction potentially. But that's, you need to be checking that. Does the lead contain all the information that you need? Are there any missing values, missing fields, anything else? Is it a current customer? If it is a current customer, what are you going to do? Do you use that as an opportunity for win back, for example? So you're going to be sending it to a customer retention team because you're like, oh, hold on, this person might be looking for a new deal, especially if you're buying the lead in. Is it a lead you've received before? Is it a dedupe? We've gone over this before on a podcast dedicated to deduplication. What you're going to do about it? What intent is behind this lead? What intent was it behind the lead when you received it before? How long ago did you receive it? What was the outcome when you received it before? And all of those things play into the fact of whether you're going to action something to do with that lead or whether you're potentially going to reject it. Is it on a do not contact list? Are there any additional verification checks needed? An example is the mobile number turned off. Is there something else in the data that you need to be verifying that you can't actually do on a form? And does it need any sort of enrichment? Some people send it off to credit checking bureaus or looking financial statuses up before they actually make a decision about whether this is a lead that they can accept, whether it's a person they can sell to. So the point is that you're trying to remove as many people that can't be your customer and letting the people that can be through, and even the people who potentially have duped, if they need to go through, and any customers, you're going to be dealing with that. And this just feeds into this point of you need leads, not sales. So, we're removing a bunch of data at this point.
Cool. So in the journey of the lead, that's receiving the lead, we're now on to distributing the lead.
Yeah. So now we've covered the form and we've removed a bunch of people and data and whatever and tried to figure out who could come through as a lead and who shouldn't. We've received the lead, and again, we've gone through the data and we've worked out, who can be a customer, who can't, and we've dealt with that in all the ways possible. And now you come to distributing the lead. And obviously, we all know this needs to be distributed in real time, unless the leads have booked a specific appointment time. And just to give you like an indication, if you measure by response rates from initial point of lead generation to the first call, it just drops off a cliff the longer you wait, unless you've booked an appointment or you've got some other strategy for following leads up. But generally, if you're just generating leads with no appointment time, anything else, the first thing you want to be concentrating on is doing all that stuff that I mentioned in real time and getting it out to where it needs to go as quickly as humanly possible. That's going to have the biggest impact on your potential conversion rates. But what you also need to do is make sure that you can receive the responses of where you've been sending the leads to. So if there's a CRM or whether it's a dialer, and then you need to map all the responses. And the reason you want to map the responses is you're looking for patterns or trends in the leads that you're receiving to see if there's any that have gone like, leads from this source, there's like a 50% over index of like wrong person, or, there's some other issue. And if you can map that as a response from the dialer back in where it says like wrong person or whatever it is, and you're mapping obviously sales, and then you need to make a decision about where it's actually going to go. If you're a brand that has multiple call centers, are you going to react to like longitude and latitude and deliver it to the nearest call center to where the home of the lead is based to get around accent bias where you get like 0.1% conversion increase? Does it need to go to a CRM for marketing? Is it just a dialer or is it both? So all these decisions need to be planned in advance. You need to set up all the rules to automate your lead distribution in advance. And this is just to do with speed, getting it out there and removing all the inefficiencies around it and making sure that you can react to the information that's coming back from wherever you're sending it to. And that should bring us nicely on to point 4.
Point 4 is our favorite, feedback loops.
Yeah. So again, we've done podcasts dedicated to this just on their own. And the whole point is that if you don't optimize for sales via feedback loops, you're just optimizing for leads. And the idea is that if you don't react to the information coming out of the outcome, all you're doing is buying more and more leads and putting it back in. So how do you optimize for sales? So basically, you need the outcome of every single lead as it reaches a specific stage. So if that's in a CRM, it'd be like the deal pipeline. If it's into a dialer, it'll be the outcome of the conversation that's been had. And what you want to be doing is making sure that you're constantly optimizing this in the moment rather than a snapshot in time. So you don't want the feedback a month later of, this is how many sales we've made, because by that time, all this like lack of sales has already happened. So imagine one source that's sending you 3,000 leads has started tanking, but you've verified all information. It looks all right. Once it hits the sales team, there's some issue. And it's only at the month then that you go, holy shit, like all this data is crap. So you don't want to be reacting to snapshots in time because traffic can change, leads can change, sales can change, and you want to work on it all in real time rather than wait until it's too late.
Cool. So that's feedback loops. And sort of still part of the journey, but slightly different. We're getting to tracking now.
Yeah, so tracking's ultimately where you make a real difference, right? So if we just reiterate what we've gone through, and this is concentrating on you need fewer leads, more sales, fewer leads. So we've got the form trying to remove people that we can't sell to. you've got receiving the data, trying to remove people we can't sell to. You've got distributing the lead, trying to make sure that we're giving the conversion or the lead the best possible chance of conversion, and mapping outcomes that means that in the future we can remove leads we can't sell to. And now this tracking and reporting is where you actually bring all of that together and start making the real difference, because instantly you can now see what is driving the sales. Is it the demographic in the data? Is it the source, the subsource, the channel, the ad, the keyword, whatever it is? You can analyze and inform everything around what is driving the sales at this point. And just to give you like an example that I have in a presentation as a spreadsheet where I'm looking at like volumes based on sources coming in, and those sources could be like Facebook, TikTok, there could be individual affiliates, lead generators, whatever. And what we're working to is benchmark conversions, and where we can't hit the benchmark conversion, we're pulling out the volume from that particular source, trying to bring new sources in, upweighting good ones and downweighting bad ones. And ultimately what it does is we're looking at a really granular level. So again, into the subsources and ads and everything. And it's moving something from like a 5.2% conversion rate in month 1 to a 7% conversion rate in month 3. And that is purely by just reacting to the information that is coming from leads. So this isn't like spending shitloads more money. It's not, you know, making tweaks here, there, and everywhere. This is literally analyzing the data and removing the stuff at the front end that we can't sell to, and then making sure that we're removing all the stuff that isn't driving the sales going forward. So there's no coaching, there's no, you know, cost behind this. This is just stuff that you can do within the data that you receive. But I'll give you some tips that I've written into the presentation that mean you can react better to this stuff. So tip 1 is, don't think high performance at low volumes can scale. It very, very rarely can. So you might be seeing a 10% conversion rate from a source, I don't know, sending in, let's say 500 leads a month. And you're thinking, great, let's start, you know, scaling Jimmy there. And, you know, we can buy loads more leads off him. It very rarely works. The performance starts to dip because something has to give to get those extra volumes. Because if someone could do more volumes, they'd be doing it already. Tip 2, I've got this in the presentation, is no unicorn data doesn't exist. And what this really means is that, like, yeah, unicorn data doesn't exist. A channel that you can drive leads from that's just going to like transform everything doesn't really exist. There isn't an ad that you can create. There isn't a landing page that you can create. There aren't any button colors. There isn't something you're going to do which is going to transform conversion rates. This is about analyzing data and understanding where you can remove leads and where you can increase sales. That's really where the unicorn data exists. It exists in the data that you're getting. You just have to like work with it differently. And tip 3 is you need to stay focused. So everything can be automated that I've been talking about, apart from one thing, which is reacting to that information that comes out the back end when you're tracking it. So when you suddenly start to see, you know, we need to remove certain sources, or we need to start spending more on this and get more data from here and bringing in more ads like this, you need to do all of that. So that's the only thing that can't be automated in that entire process.
So do you want me to boo you now, just sort of like get people like prepared for tomorrow when the crowds are actually in front? No, I think that's pretty good.
It's a pity we're not in the same room and you've got like a bunch of rotten tomatoes or something. That'd be quite cool.
I was thinking I could simulate like a boo sound, but I thought it might really freak you out. But yeah, I thought it was actually a useful thing to do because, like I say, it's in Greece, the presentation online, obviously, but is it in Greece you're doing it too? I don't know, but realistically, I think that was content that hopefully was found useful. So I think it was worthwhile thing to cover.
Yeah, well, I think all of this is quite sort of straightforward information. And really what it's about is like a perception shift in like, oh, we need to generate more leads, or look how cheap we can get these leads. And it's like, no, how many sales are these leads making?
Yeah.
It's just switching it to being outcome based. And really what I've guess I'm trying to talk through is how you literally action that, like what you should be doing to make sure that you can do that, because ultimately it works for everyone.
Yeah, definitely.
You need fewer leads.
Small snippet right there. Like we say, we did this before. We talked about it in a more ideological sense, like why this idea is important. But I think in this one, there's a case of unpacking like practical things people can start doing. So hopefully, people have found loads of tips and interesting ideas to sort of to implement in their own work. So yeah, hopefully you feel prepared for tomorrow, Simon. And yeah, you're ready to go and give it. But yeah, that was episode 82. You need fewer leads.
Thanks for listening to the B2C Lead Generation podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe to hear more from those at the very cutting edge of the lead gen world.